Okay, you're going to get a 2-for-1 today. I believe this is number 9 and 10 because they're similar. So I'm going to skip Saturday. Be careful who you share good news with. Be careful who you share bad news with. That's because if you share good news with someone you can't trust, they'll get jealous. If you share bad news, they could use it against you. Jordan Peterson talks a lot about betrayal. Those of you who are more than teenage in my audience have been betrayed. If you haven't yet been betrayed by a friend, you will. And one of the worst things about the passion was not just the physical suffering and the mocking and the scourging, but the betrayal. Emotional pain is worse than physical pain. This is why Dante places Judas at the center of hell. Betrayal of trust, betrayal of a friend is a kind of treason. You can't trust everybody. You become somewhat vulnerable and naked when you love and when you trust. And yet, yesterday we were talking about friendship. The day before, we were talking about marriage. And this is a great quote by C.S. Lewis. Even though you're bound to be betrayed and you're bound to be hurt, to love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully round with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It, your heart, will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. To love is to be vulnerable. And yet, we have to be prudent. Be careful who you share good news with. Be careful who you share bad news with. My friend who was married for 24 years, the wife said, "I've got a lover. See you, Charlie. So long." Because how do you recover from that? Not only does that in and of itself hurt, but then you say, what was wrong with me 24 years ago when I married this woman? How bad is my judgment? How naive am I? I had an actress whose husband told her he wanted a divorce, told her the day after Thanksgiving, and he had the papers all ready to go and drawn up. Told her he was tired of her complaining about how difficult her job was. On the day of the divorce, he told her he never wanted to speak to her again. They had to speak on the phone a few weeks later. They got into a fight, and he said to her, "Why don't you just go kill yourself?" Imagine one human being saying that to another, especially someone that you had trusted and loved, saying that to you. We're capable of anything. I came up with a system, a little quote: can't care, don't care, won't care. There's some people who can't care because they're just too messed up. I was thinking about businesses. We were dealing with a client who was so disorganized, they couldn't do the right thing even if they wanted to. They couldn't care. Then we had a client in the Catholic world who didn't care. They were just cold. Didn't matter to them. They were going to do what they were going to do. If you suffered, fine. If you didn't, fine. They're just going to go straight ahead. Can't care, don't care, won't care is when people push back against you and try to hurt you, where there is malevolence involved. All of this happens to us and more. We talk about the great evils of history, but in our personal lives, how do you recover from these kinds of things? Especially when you start to doubt yourself. Because if another person is capable of betraying you, as Jordan Peterson says, you know what you're capable of doing. And you know that you've been such a fool that you've left yourself open to that. But what's the alternative? To lock your heart in a casket, as C.S. Lewis says? It becomes unbreakable, but imperishable and hard. We are to have circumcised hearts. We're to have hearts of flesh and not of stone. So the Bible tells us. And yet, be careful who you share good news with. Be careful who you share bad news with. Be careful, because we're capable of anything.